What if the voice begging for help wasn't the one who made the call? A whisper in the background. A scream that didn't match the location. The line went dead, but the nightmare had only begun. The tape begins with static. Then a sharp inhale. Someone's breathing fast. Too fast. And then, a woman's voice, broken by panic. I think someone's in my house. I don't know where he is, but I can feel him. Dispatcher asks for her name. She doesn't respond right away. Just whispers, I shouldn't have come back here. It was 2:14 a.m., October 9th. Greenville, Missouri. The call lasted 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And to this day, no one knows where the voice came from. Her name was Mallory Keene, 27. A behavioral trauma specialist who'd moved away years ago to escape the house her brother had died in. She told friends she had unfinished business. She told her mother she needed closure. But what she didn't tell anyone was that she'd been hearing whispers again. Late-night knocks with no one there. Scratches under the floorboards. And a sound she hadn't heard since she was 9. A man sobbing in the attic. Mallory's brother, Jude, was 13 when he died. He was found in that same attic, face twisted like he'd seen something impossible. Back then, they called it suicide. But Mallory remembered the last thing he ever said to her. Don't let it find you in the dark. And whatever you do, never answer the knock. The knock started again 2 days after she moved back in. Always at 2 a.m. 3 slow knocks. Silence. Then the smell. Wet copper. Like rusted blood. Like something old had been waiting for her. When police arrived, there was no sign of forced entry. The front door was still chained from the inside. Mallory's car was in the driveway. Her phone was still charging in the bedroom. Unlocked. No call in her history. But the 911 center had the call logged. From her number. And it had a second voice. Muffled. Low. Almost growling. Saying only one thing over and over. She opened the door. She opened it. What if your childhood warnings weren't metaphors but instructions for survival? What if the only place you ever feared most never forgot you? The attic door wasn't supposed to open, but that night swung wide. The officers on duty were expecting a routine wellness check. Call came from inside the home. No response on callback. No movement visible through the windows. But the porch light was on, and something kept flickering in the hallway upstairs, like a bulb that refused to die. They called out for Mallory. No answer. They circled the house twice. No forced entry. No open doors. Only the faint smell of rot, and something sweeter, like wilted lilies left too long in stagnant water. It was Officer Kendall who found the side key. A fake rock tucked under a cracked ceramic owl. The same one Mallory's mother had placed there when Jude was still alive. Inside, the air was colder than expected, but the thermostat read 70. There was no breeze, no open window, just silence, and that flickering hallway light upstairs, still twitching like a heartbeat. 2 days before the 911 call, Mallory recorded a voice memo. It was never sent. It sat buried in her iCloud, timestamped 2:03 a.m. I heard it again. The attic latch moved by itself. I went up there today. I wish I hadn't. Something's in the insulation. I saw finger marks in the dust. Not handprints, just the fingers dragging. She sounded disconnected, detached from her own fear, like she was reliving something, not experiencing it for the first time. That night, she texted a friend. What happens if you open a door you weren't supposed to? No one responded. Not because they didn't care, but because she never hit send. Mallory was 8 when Jude first started sleepwalking. He'd wake up on the attic stairs, whispering numbers. Always the same pattern. 3, 2, 1. Then silence. Then screaming. Doctors said it was night terrors. But Mallory remembered what he told her. Whispered from under his blanket. The countdown means it's close. It stands behind the door until you say its name. He never told her the name. But the night before he died, he scratched something into the wooden attic beam. 3 letters. backwards, burned into the wood like they'd been seared there. They painted over it, pretended it didn't matter. But when the officers stepped into the attic that night, the paint had peeled back, revealing the same word again. Fresh, wet, smelling like burnt teeth. Officer Kendall was the first to step toward the attic. He hesitated at the base of the stairs, not out of fear, but because he heard something, not footsteps, not breathing, ticking, rhythmic, steady, like a grandfather clock in an empty funeral home. The attic door wasn't locked, but the lock was still latched. From the inside, that's what stopped him cold. How could it be latched and still slightly open? They forced the door the rest of the way, creaked like something in pain. Dust spilled into the hallway like ash, and the ticking stopped. The attic was empty, except for a single half-burned cassette tape, labeled in red ink, "Play when the knocking stops." Officer Kendall brought the tape down. They had to dig up an old player from the evidence van. But when they pressed play, no voices, just sounds, scraping, wet breathing, 3 knocks, a long silence, then a voice, whispering like it was behind the listener's neck. She remembered, so we opened the door for her. And then it ended. The tape burned itself out, literally, melted inside the player, without heat, without spark, just blackened into ruin. What if the walls you grew up in could speak? What if they never stopped listening? What if something in your childhood home remembered your secrets and used them against you? Because what the officers found next wasn't in the attic. It was under the floorboards. The next morning, the house sat under a pale gray sky, quiet, too quiet for a place where someone had screamed the night before. No signs of struggle, no broken furniture, no blood, but the house felt wrong. The kind of wrong that hides in the wallpaper, like someone had rewritten the air. Detective Lana Rivas was brought in from Cold Case. She didn't like superstition, didn't care for whispers or half-burned tapes. But the moment she crossed the threshold, her nose started to bleed. Mallory never kept journals, except for one, a leather-bound notebook, found wedged behind the boiler in the basement. It was soaked, but some pages were still legible. I hear them when I sleep. Not him, the others. They tell me the house isn't haunted, just waiting, and it's tired of being forgotten. I saw Jude again. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me, and crying. He said I brought something back with me, but I never left anything behind. Did I? When Mallory was 6, she and Jude played a game. They called it Quiet Steps. The rules were simple. Wait until the house was silent. Sneak into the hallway. Place your ear to the floor. Listen for the whispers. Mallory thought Jude made it up, until the night she heard the voice say her name. Mallory, Mallory, don't leave me here. She told her parents. They said she was dreaming, so she stopped listening. Jude didn't. He played alone, every night, until he stopped talking altogether, and started writing symbols on the underside of his bed. Detective Rivas noticed the pattern. The hallway upstairs had an odd hollow sound, like the boards weren't nailed properly, like something was underneath. She pried one loose, then another, and beneath the floorboards, buried in soft insulation, she found a cache of cassette tapes, 9 of them, each labeled with a single name: Mallory, Jude, Walter, Elaine, Becca, Anna, Travis, LK unknown. Some were warped, melted along the edges like they'd been burned and frozen at once. But one tape was intact, labeled simply, Jude. They played the tape in a soundproof room. It began with humming, a child's voice, soft, off-key, a song not easily placed, but the melody twisted into static every few seconds. Then the voice of Jude, not speaking to the microphone, speaking to someone else in the room. You said if I kept the door closed, it wouldn't come back. But it's angry now, because she forgot. She's supposed to remember. She was the one who let it in. Then, the sound of scratching, not on the tape, but on the walls of the room as it played, as if the tape itself was summoning something back. The playback stopped, but the room stayed cold for hours. That night, Detective Rivas stayed behind. She couldn't sleep. She kept hearing footsteps upstairs. But she was alone. She walked to the hallway where the tapes were found, kneeling over the exposed boards. And she swears, the floor exhaled, like a lung beneath the wood, a soft warm breath against her hand. Then, knock, 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 underneath. She ripped more boards back. More dust, more silence, until a blackened handprint, charred, pressed against the underside of the next board. And inside it, embedded in the grain, a human fingernail. The next day, Rivas ran every name from the tapes. Becca Quinn, missing since 2007. Travis Dorn, found dead in 2011. Official cause, exposure. Elaine Harris, disappeared from her apartment. Never found. Walter Keene, reported missing. Declared legally dead. Anna Lee, last seen near Greenville in 2009. Vanished. Okay, no record. Possibly a child. Possibly not. Each name on the tape matched a missing person. And each one had one thing in common. They'd all spent time at the Keene house, even if only for a single night. Old sleepovers, childhood parties, playdates forgotten by time. And the last tape? Unknown. No name, no year. Only a time scribbled across the label. 2:14 a.m. The exact minute Mallory's 911 call began. What if someone left you a message, and you were never supposed to hear it? What if it wasn't a warning, but a summoning? Because when they played the last tape, the one labeled unknown, they didn't just hear something. They unlocked it. The room was sealed. Lights dimmed. 3 people present. Detective Rivas, audio tech James Weller, and Officer Damaris Hall. None of them knew what to expect. The other tapes had been disturbing, but explainable. Voices, sounds, distorted memories. This one felt different before it even played. The plastic casing was cold. Too cold, like it had been buried in snow. And there were no spools inside. No visible tape. Just black. But the moment it clicked into the player, the room temperature dropped by 12 degrees. James hit play. The screen flickered, even though they weren't using a screen. First silence. Then a high-pitched tone like tinnitus, but deeper, thicker. Felt like it was vibrating inside their bones. Then a voice. Not a recording. Not through the speaker, but inside the room. One of you doesn't belong here. James looked up, but neither Rivas nor Hall had spoken. Then the sound changed. Footsteps. Not on the recording. On the floorboards above them. Then scraping. A dragging noise. Then a child's voice whispered, almost directly into Rivas' ear. He's in the crawlspace. Detective Rivas stood up. The room spun. She gripped the edge of the table to stay steady. And in that moment, she saw something. Not a vision. Not a hallucination. A memory. Except it wasn't hers. She was standing in the Keene hallway. Only she was smaller. Child-size. Looking up at the attic door. Jude was beside her, holding a flashlight, trembling. He looked her in the eye and whispered, "You were never supposed to come back." And then the vision snapped. She was in the room again, sweating, breathing hard. James had stopped the tape. He looked shaken. But Hall, she was staring at the wall, whispering something under her breath. "I see it now. I see what she opened." Back at headquarters, Rivas dug through archived call logs. What she found shouldn't have existed. A 911 call from 1996. Same address. Same minute. 2:14 a.m. But the name listed wasn't Mallory. It was Elaine Harris, one of the names from the tapes. The recording was nearly lost, filed under a different case ID. But when Rivas played it, her hands went numb. Because it started the same exact way as Mallory's. "I think someone's in my house. I don't know where he is." But Elaine had never lived there. She'd only visited the Keenes as a child. And yet, her call had come from inside the Keene residence. 30 years before Mallory's. And her final words? It's not a person. It's remembering me. Back at the house, Rivas, James, and Hall returned to investigate. There was no crawlspace on record. No blueprints showed it. But the voice had said, "He's in the crawlspace." They checked the baseboards, the vents, even beneath the stairs. Nothing. Until James noticed something behind the kitchen wall. An air vent that didn't blow air. Just breathed. They removed the panel. Behind it, tunnel. No wider than a coffin. Lined with insulation, teeth marks, and clawed wooden beams. Something had lived there. The tunnel led straight beneath the house. Straight under the hallway. Straight beneath where the tapes had been hidden. And scrawled on the beams inside. Hundreds of carvings. Not words. Dates. Every October 9 teach. Back to 1961. And in the middle of the tunnel wall, an embedded child's tooth. Still bloody. Still warm. As Rivas crawled deeper, her flashlight flickered. The air turned wet. The tunnel walls pulsed. As if they were lined with tissue instead of wood. She heard breathing. Not hers. Not Hall's or James'. Slow. Staggered. Like lungs that hadn't breathed in years. Waking up. Then she saw the carvings shift. The dates rearranged. They formed a word. E-N-I. The same 3 letters from the attic beam. But this time, they were bleeding. Fresh. A whisper echoed in her skull. Every time the tape plays, it remembers where we are. At the very end of the crawlspace, buried under a collapsed wooden plank. Rivas found a box. Old. Rotted. Wrapped in decayed cloth. Inside it, nestled between dry bones, was a final tape. This one had no label. Just her name carved into the plastic casing. Lana. She didn't touch it. Didn't speak. Because in that moment, the radio from her squad car buzzed to life above ground. A voice crackled through the static. 911 emergency. Please state your location. Hello? Can you hear me? Someone just called from inside your house. What if someone recorded your memories before you ever lived them? What if a tape, buried under the floor of a stranger's house, had your name on it and your voice inside? Detective Lana Rivas never believed in curses. Until she pressed play. The crawlspace was closing in behind her. The deeper she went, the less the light followed. James and Officer Hall called out from behind, but the air was too thick now. Too wet with something unseen. The box in her hands felt heavy. Not in weight. In meaning. The bones inside were small. Child-sized. Ribs no larger than a thumb. And the tape, no label. Just her name. Carved by something jagged. Scratched into the plastic, not written. Lana. No last name. No date. Only her first name, as if the house knew her. She hadn't told anyone this. Not even her mother. Not even herself, really. But she'd been to the Keene house before. Once. When she was 6. A sleepover. She didn't remember who the kid was. Just a vague sense of dread. And a hallway that breathed. A smell like hot wires and spoiled fruit. And a hand, reaching under the door as she slept. Back then, she thought it was a dream. But now, with this tape in her hands, she wasn't so sure. Back at HQ, after escaping the crawlspace, Rivas dug through her mother's attic. Old boxes, family albums. She needed proof. Anything. And then, there it was. Polaroid. Tucked behind a school project. Picture of her, age 6, sitting on a porch. Not hers. A White House, chipped paint, a ceramic owl on the step. And beside her, another little girl. Brown hair, white eyes, a crooked smile. Mallory Keene, written on the back. Lana plus Mallory, summer 1997. Her breath caught in her throat. That trip wasn't a dream. She'd been here. She knew Mallory. But something had made her forget. She took the tape to the only working player. She was alone. Lights off. Window cracked. Just enough air to breathe. She pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Her voice. He's in the wall again. I told her not to go near it. But she laughed. She said the voices were just pretend. They weren't. They told me I'd forget everything. And then remember, too late. She heard a knock. Not on the tape. Behind her. 3 slow knocks on her apartment door. But when she opened it, no one. Just the faint smell of lilies. And something warm. Copper. Blood. The tape kept playing. The sounds warped. Flashes. Not just audio. Memories. Lana walking in the hallway. Age 6. Mallory behind her. A game they played. Quiet steps. She remembered now. How they both laid down ear to the floor. Listening for the whispers. How they both heard the name. E.N.I. How Mallory asked her to help open the attic door. And how Lana said yes. That was the first time they saw it. Or rather, felt it. They never saw its face. Just the feeling. A weight behind the door. Something watching. And a single word carved into the wood. Remember. Rivas rushed back to the evidence board. The names on the tapes. The call logs. The disappearances. She was on the wall now. Her name. A red string tied between herself. And Mallory. And Jude. And a dozen other kids. All of them. Connected by the house. By visits they couldn't remember. Sleepovers. Playdates. Little forgotten moments. That weren't forgotten at all. They'd all been chosen. Marked. By the whisper behind the door. And every tape. Wasn't just a memory. It was a contract. Rivas looked again at the tape labeled unknown. Something clicked. All the voices across the tapes. They were children who had been marked. Who'd gone missing. And the voice whispering on each recording. Wasn't warning them. It was cataloging them. One by one. Each name. Each tape. Each disappearance. A transaction. And her name? Her tape? Had been waiting years to be played. Because the final name in the crawl space, freshly carved under all the others, wasn't Mallory. It was Lana Rivas. Dated October 9th, 2025. 2 days from now. What would you do if the date of your own disappearance was already carved into wood? What if your name, your future, was buried beneath a stranger's house, years before you ever arrived? For Detective Lana Rivas, October 9th wasn't just a deadline. It was a promise. 48 hours left. That's what the timeline said. The tapes, the attic, the crawl space, the scratches on her apartment door that no one else could see. Every sign pointed to one thing. She wasn't just investigating the case. She was the next case. And something had begun following her. The air felt wrong. Everywhere. Light bulbs buzzed around her head like insects. Electronics flickered. Voices warbled from radios that weren't turned on. She stopped sleeping. Not because of fear. Because of noise. Whispers from the floorboards. Laughter in the pipes. And always, at 2:14 a.m., the knock. 3 of them. Always slow. Always hollow. Like a forgotten child's hand tapping from the other side. She recorded it once. Played it back. There was a voice beneath the knock. We remember you. Do you remember him? Lana had one recurring memory now. Kept coming in waves. Not a full scene. Just pieces. A boy in the attic. Face covered in soot. Eyes white. He wasn't Jude. He was older. Taller. Dressed in outdated clothes. A shirt with buttons. And no shoes. And he kept saying the same thing. She opened it. But you held the door. Then he'd turn. And behind him, a door that didn't match the house. A cellar door. Red. Rust-covered. Smeared with handprints. Rivas had never seen that room. Not in the house. Not anywhere. Until now. The Keene house was scheduled for demolition. Too many missing persons tied to the address. Too much public fear. But Lana had 2 days left. She needed to see it again. She didn't ask permission. She broke in. Alone. The house was quiet. Deader than it had been the first time. Even the air felt still. She went straight to the crawlspace. No one had resealed it. The vent was still open. The cold still lingered. But this time something was different. At the end of the tunnel, where she'd found the tapes, there was now a trapdoor. Not wood. Steel. Not rusted. Fresh. Cold to the touch. And carved into it, In deep, bloody letters. Open to remember. She opened it. There was no ladder, just stairs carved from blackened stone, each step pulsing with heat, like a wound beneath the house. As she descended, the air thickened. Her flashlight flickered, then died. But the tunnel was glowing. Not from light, from memories. They pulsed on the walls. Flickers of children, old birthday parties, Jude laughing, Mallory screaming, and then herself, 6 years old, standing in a room she never remembered being in, smiling, until the camera panned behind her and caught the thing in the corner, tall, gaunt, his face, a blur of mouths, all whispering the same word. Lana. She reached the base of the tunnel, the red cellar door. It opened before she touched it. Inside, a room lined with shelves, and on those shelves, tapes, hundreds, every single one, a name, a life, and at the far end, a mirror, cracked, but not reflecting. Instead, it showed a hallway, the Keene house, the attic stairs, and Jude, standing alone. But he wasn't 13. He was older, as he'd never lived to become. He turned, looked through the mirror. You should have remembered sooner. Then the mirror spoke. Not Jude. The thing behind him. The same faceless shape. The blur of mouths. And they all whispered. E&I is not a name. It's a request. We ask it before we take. E&I. Anyone. We don't choose names. We ask. Anyone. And those who answer, remember too late. Rivas fell to her knees. She had answered. That night as a child, playing quiet steps, laying on the floor, hearing the whisper. She remembered now. Anyone? Yes, she had whispered. Me. A child's mistake. A whispered response in the dark. But it had sealed her fate. And all these years later, she was finally being collected. The final tape wasn't being made. It had been made already. It was just waiting to be played. She ran. Crawled back up the stairs, through the trapdoor, through the crawl space, but her flashlight never turned back on. And the house had shifted. The windows, gone. The hallway, shorter. The attic door, wide open. And inside the player, a tape was already spinning, labeled in red ink. Lana Rivas, October 9th. She never pressed play, but it played anyway. And the last thing she heard, before everything went black, was her own voice. I hear someone knocking, but there's no one there. What if the final clue was your own voice? What if your fate had already been recorded, and all that was left was to listen? Detective Lana Rivas vanished on October 9th, but her voice didn't. The morning after Lana went missing, Officer Hall returned to the house, not with backup, not with hope. Just one purpose, to collect the final tape. But when she arrived, the Keene house was gone. Not destroyed, not burned, gone. The land was still there, flat, silent. But the house? Vanished, like it had been unzipped from time. But the porch light was on. And in the center of the lot, sitting on the grass, was a single cassette player. Still warm, still spinning. Officer Hall picked it up with shaking hands. The label read, Lana Rivas. Playback 1/1. She hit play. Rivas' voice was calm, but distant, like someone halfway between dream and death. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out. Or maybe I did. And you'll never know the difference. It's not a house. Not really. It's a wound. A scar that bleeds every October. And it only remembers the ones who remember it. She paused. A breath. Then she whispered, It remembered me. Because I let it. When I was 6, I said yes. I didn't know what I was saying yes to. But now I do. In the final minutes of the tape, Lana's voice changed. She wasn't speaking into a recorder anymore. She was narrating, to us, to you, to anyone who ever listened. And as she spoke, her memory played beneath her words, like overlapping film reels. It started before the Keenes, before Jude, before any of us. There was a boy, in 1961, name unknown. He lived in the original house that stood on this land. He was lonely, abandoned, hurt. So he knocked. And when no one answered, he started asking, anyone? Anyone? The first child who whispered yes, let him in. And from that first invitation, the echo never stopped, kept asking, generation after generation, visiting in dreams, in floorboards, in static, and every yes carved a new name into the house, until it wasn't a structure anymore. It was a memory trap, a collector of whispers, a museum of the forgotten. I tried to run, I tried to forget, but forgetting is exactly what it wants, because it doesn't feed on fear, it feeds on remembrance. And now that I remember everything, it has me. Another pause, then a softer tone. But maybe this time, it's different. Maybe this tape breaks the chain. Or maybe it just adds my name to the list. Either way, if you're listening, don't answer the knock. Don't say yes. And if you ever find a tape with your name on it, don't play it. The tape ended. But as Hall turned away, the recorder clicked. By itself. A new tape inside it. No label. Just a blank one. She turned it over. Her hands trembled, because etched lightly, barely visible, were 3 faint letters. H-A-L. She dropped it, but the recorder clicked again. The tape began to spin. And from the speaker came her own voice. Hello? I think someone's in my house. I don't know where he is, but I can feel him. Do you think this was a ghost? Or something worse? Comment below. I want to know what you heard. And if you ever find a tape with your name on it, don't play it. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret for more terrifying true stories. This story may be over, but something tells me the next one has already begun.